Have you ever tried to do something on faith and you were like, boy, I hope this works. I hope this doesn't mess up. I've got all of my desire in this situation. I want this situation to turn out all right. Oh boy, God, please make this work. I think we've all had feelings like that from one time or another. And in Ruth chapter 3, I think both Ruth and Boaz and Naomi are kind of in that situation. You know, the whole book of Ruth, it's a love story, but it's about how God's purpose prevails even when we fail. Yeah, Naomi and Elimelech probably shouldn't have gone to the land of Moab, but God's purpose prevailed in the situation, and Ruth ended up giving her life to the God of Israel. She ended up meeting Naomi, of course, and they came back to Israel, and God set it up so that they could meet Boaz. The whole purpose of the book is that God's purpose is to continue the line leading straight to David and ultimately to the Messiah. Let's see how the story continues. Ruth chapter 3. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." And it's interesting, the Hebrew expression for well provided for is manawach, and it means rest. And it's similar to the word that was used earlier in Ruth chapter 1, where Naomi hoped that Orpah and Ruth would find rest in the home of another husband. In fact, I think it's a variant of the same word. And that's how marriage, a good, godly marriage, ought to be looked at. It's not like, oh boy, I'm marrying a battle axe, or oh boy, I'm marrying a jerk instead of Mr. Right, or oh boy, I'm going to have my life really cramped down and crimped in right now. No, marriage should be a relationship of rest, where you can let your hair down, where you can be yourself. And that's what I want for you. That's what Naomi is saying to Ruth. Verse 2, "Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but do not let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking." Now, he is a relative, but the expression relative is also the word that could mean redeemer. And that's what Boaz is. He is a kinsman redeemer. And I got some notes in here on the responsibilities of a kinsman redeemer. The kinsman redeemer was responsible to buy a fellow Israelite out of slavery, Leviticus chapter 25, verse 48. He was responsible to be the avenger of blood, to make sure that a murderer is held accountable. Numbers 35:19. He was responsible to buy back family land that had been forfeited, and that's one of the roles they're asking of Boaz here. That's Leviticus 25:25, to redeem Elimelech and Naomi's land. And 4, he was responsible to carry on the family name by marrying a childless widow. And so that's the goal of, that's the purpose of a kinsman redeemer. And so it's interesting that Boaz has not approached Ruth about this. Maybe he's thinking, I'm way older than she is. She's not going to be interested. I'm not going to offer it unless I detect that she's interested in any way. And Ruth's probably thinking, well, how come he's not interested? How come he hasn't offered yet? And so Naomi is saying to Ruth, now Boaz is a relative of ours. He's going to be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, put on your best clothes, go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. Now this is bold, but it's totally culturally appropriate for a woman in that situation to ask for the protection and rest and security of marriage that a kinsman redeemer can provide. Verse 4, when he lies down, note the place where he is lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. And some people have seen something sexual and suggestive and sensual and uncovering his feet. But in this particular instance, it just means that she is submitting to Boaz's leadership and saying, I'm not trying to force you to do something you don't want to do, but I'm humbly submitting to whatever it is that God has put on your heart. But I am making this humble request for marriage. Now, Ruth could have been more demanding. She could have said, you know what, we have a right to have Naomi's property redeemed, and you got to do this. And Naomi wisely said, don't be demanding your rights. Come before Boaz humbly, asking for him to spread the corner of his garment over you in marital protection. And then he'll tell you what to do. Verse 5, Ruth said, I will do whatever you say. She didn't go, ew, he's an older guy. Because I think one of the things that makes Ruth a woman of noble character is that she was attracted to who Boaz truly was and not looking at the outside appearance. Too often, people today fall in love with the outside appearance. They fall in love with somebody because they look good, or they're buff, or they're built, or this or that or the other, and they don't take time to get to know the person on the inside. Another thing is that dating relationships today don't always give you an accurate picture of what the person is like. Of course, when you're dating somebody, when you're getting to know them, they're putting on their best face forward. They're putting on their best behavior. I think the best way to get to know somebody is when you get to know them in group settings, in work settings, in the context of other relationships, how they get along with their parents. And that's how Boaz and Ruth have been able to interact with each other at the barley field. Ruth has seen how Boaz kindly and compassionately treats his employees, and Boaz has seen how Ruth has kindly and compassionately cared for her mother-in-law, and how she works hard and isn't dependent on charity. So I think they learn more from each other in these social settings than they would have, let's say, behind closed doors or in a covered tent with nobody around where everybody's putting on a front. So I think that this is, very legit. Verse 6, so she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. Verse 7, when Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. A cynic might suggest that maybe he had a little too much to drink and he was too lazy and tired and worn out to try to make his way home, which is why he fell asleep in the grain field, and certainly that's possible. But what is even more likely is that people were stealing grain from people's barns in the middle of the time of the judges. And it wasn't uncommon for harvest time people to sleep near the grain and the barley to make sure that nobody is stealing. If you go to 1 Samuel chapter 23, it says, when David was told, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are looting the threshing floors, he inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go and attack these Philistines? So it was not uncommon for enemies or marauders or thieves to try to rob threshing floors. And so Boaz just as well could have been there watching it. I mean, he didn't have to do it himself. It could have been one of his employees, but all that is certainly possible. It says, while he went over to lie down, he fell asleep apparently. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down in her best clothes in the middle of the grain, in the threshing floor. Verse 8, in the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. If he's there guarding the grain pile, he's probably not expecting somebody to be there. and he's even more surprised to find that there's a woman there. Who are you? He asked. They didn't have LCD lights back then, and it was dark. She said, I am your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer, a kinsman redeemer of our family. We talked about what the role of the kinsman redeemer was. And by spreading the corner of your garment over me, in Jewish weddings, the groom would sometimes take the part of his garment and cover the woman with it, symbolizing that he was covering her with the protection of his love, with the security of life together as a family. And that's what she's asking. It's bold, but it's totally appropriate. And verse 10, he doesn't say, well, you're being really forward, woman. He says, the Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men. So apparently, Boaz was thinking, well, I'm not going to offer myself as a kinsman redeemer because she's younger than me. She'll go after the younger men. I don't want to do it unless she is comfortable with it. You haven't run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. And we know she's a woman of noble character because she hasn't run after the younger men. She hasn't gone chasing after boys. She's cared for and provided for her mother-in-law. She's a hard worker and she's a person of moral fiber. Verse 12, although it is true that I am a kinsman redeemer or a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Now that's a piece of tension that we haven't encountered before. There's another kinsman redeemer. He's even more closely related to Elimelech, or actually I believe it's pronounced Elimelech. He's even more closely related. So stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your kinsman redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized, and he said, no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor. And I remember reading that thinking, well, why did he say that? And I got a note on that here. Let's see if I can find that note. Boaz and Ruth were not trying to hide anything scandalous. It was just that Boaz didn't want this nearer kinsman to know that Ruth was now demanding her right to marriage to a kinsman redeemer before Boaz could tell him personally. Well, that makes sense. Verse 15, he also said, bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley. He didn't have dark chocolate with him. He didn't have any sweets, so he gave her a huge portion of barley. The very barley he was guarding is some of the barley that he gave Ruth. And he placed the bundle on her, then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi said, how did it go, my daughter? And then she said, really good. Well, then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. What's going to happen? This is a new development in the plot. There's another kinsman redeemer. When he finds out that land can be redeemed, and they don't grow land on trees. They're not making any new land anymore. When he finds out it's available, is he going to take the land? Is this going to spoil the chance that Boaz and Ruth could be together? What is God's plan in all this? What are God's purposes? We'll have to find out on Monday. I was going to try to finish it today, but I have to go and see somebody that I want to visit and have prayer with. But we'll be back on Monday to see how God's purposes prevail, even when we have trouble always knowing what the right decisions are. I hope you guys have enjoyed this fun study of Ruth. I'm excited. I can't wait till Ruth chapter 4. You got to come back Monday morning at 9 a.m. You guys have a great day, and God bless.